Test, test. Yeah.
Thank you. Roll call.
Chair Young,
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong,
Here.
Commissioner Boley,
Here.
Commissioner Cohen,
Here.
Commissioner Caldonado,
Present.
Commissioner Della Torre,
Here.
Commissioner Diaz,
Here.
Commissioner Goodman,
Here.
Commissioner LaMorte,
Here.
Commissioner Navarro is currently absent, and Commissioner Pace is absent.
He's notified us. Thank you. A report of the posting of the agenda.
In accordance with policy, the agenda was posted at Palm Springs City Hall, the Palm Springs Leisure Center, and the City of Palm Springs website last Wednesday morning. Is that correct? Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. As far as the minutes go, has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any notices of correction or change? Yes. Commissioner Goodman?
I just, on page 6, as I was reading, and really could have just been where I was at that moment, the very last paragraph, the very last line says, "Dogs don't mind the dirt, but the," and then on the top of page 7, Commissioner Goodman suggested. I don't know if we're missing a sentence or if that.
I think what's missing is the words "people do."
Right, so I just wanted to point out that I noticed that there wasn't a continuation or a sentence might be missing.
So can you restate the corrected version?
Charles was correct.
Charles, you had it, which is,
But people do,
but the people do.
right.
Okay. People do.
Some dogs mind the dirt, but
Great. With those changes, I'd entertain a motion for the minutes. So moved. Second? Commissioner Cohen? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carolina would abstain. Great, thank you. Do we have any correspondence today?
We have none.
Great, thank you. This is the time for public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There is 3 minutes allowed for each speaker, and we have a seat available. And when the first speaker sits down, if you'll just turn the mic on, we'd welcome any of you to come forward to speak. Great. Please mention your name as you sit down so we have that on record and the city you live in. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Hyams, Palm Springs resident, District 4. My wife and I are members over at the Demuth Recreation Center, and I really just wanted to share some good news today, some good perspective. During the recent Stormageddon, I thought the staff there, my wife and I live very close to the center, and we were able to sneak over there midday for our workout. And John and Noel, who are there at the center, John was on duty that day. He had his shop vac off and was moving in the center there in the big room, and then of course over where the fitness is, kind of as the water was kind of coming through the wall, you know, where it comes in contact, he was doing his thing diligently. So really just passing on our appreciation for John and Noel over at the center. I'll be there a little bit later for my workout today. And then one other observation I wanted to share with you all. My wife and I were at the Christmas tree lighting. This was back in early December. I'm sorry I missed the meeting in this December. And we got there a little bit late. It was a wonderful event. I could tell I wish we'd gotten there a little bit earlier, but what I observed were tables that were set up by Parks and Rec where young people, mostly young people, were painting on these really nice, I thought classy, what I now know are 8x10 canvas frames. and they were doing their thing, so much so that the parents were there with their phones and their lights because it was getting dark. One suggestion is if we had a generator, we could get them light. I think they would have stayed there for hours. They were really doing it, and I stood there and I sat back and I thought to myself, wow, Grandma and Grandpa are about to get a Christmas gift, and how much more personal than that. And again, my observation was this was a large portion of the community that perhaps this was the child's only way to get a gift, if you will, and what a special gift it was. So my wife and I really support that and would obviously encourage that to continue. And those sort of events where these younger folks have a chance to express themselves, maybe just not art, but music or other venues, especially, again, perhaps ones that wouldn't normally be able to afford something like that. I think it's a great opportunity. So I applaud, and my wife does too, what you all are doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that, David, and please thank your wife for us as well for having you come in. Next speaker, please.
My name is,
Yeah,
I'm
there you
sorry.
go.
My name is McGarvey Crawford Jr. I'm the founder of the Desert Highland Community Support Foundation. It is a locally based 501(c) nonprofit service organization providing community support services to the James O. Jesse and James O. Jesse Unity Center and the Desert Highland community. I was born and raised in Palm Springs, and I have used public parks in Palm Springs since 1956, when my parents started going to Ruth Hardy for family gatherings. My foundation encourages healthy, positive, and safe activities. My foundation, with the help of my friend Dean Mangione, who I've known for 40 years, who is the regional ambassador for USA Pickleball. Through Dean's effort, he introduced 2 teenager boys to pickleball. They entered in an international pickleball tournament at the Tennis Gardens where they won 2 matches. The boys and other pickleball players trained on one of the 8 courts at Ruth Hardy Park. During the 7-month period, the tennis players at Ruth Hardy Park demonstrated dislike towards the pickleball players by taunting pickleball players, even threatening to call immigration enforcement on the other people of color playing pickleball, based on the sign posted at the courts and the local police, who told pickleball players they had the legal right to play there. The boys were confused about what was occurring regarding the playing of pickleball. We encouraged them to appear at a Park and Recs meeting, which on September 8th, I have it right here, they were given a document. This paper was an agreement they understood the board would implement. Not only have the boys not seen any changes, there is now a sign that says tennis only posted at the park. Pickleball players go to Demuth Park. Posted alongside a sign that's stating tennis-related activities. The boys and other pickleball players can't understand why they can't use 1 tennis court out of 8 temporarily for 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday from 7 to 12. The boys can't go to Demuth Park. They both have respiratory problems and they use inhalers. According to the Air Quality Management District, methane gas is more of a nuisance and not a physical hazard. But methane gas exposure can cause headaches and shortness of breath. They've expressed concerns that the Park and Recreation is changing the rules so they cannot use a public park. The boys feel that because of the taunting, the threats to call immigration and the police being called, that these events are because they are being discriminated against because of a game they want to play. We told them they have a right to use public accommodations and that these accommodations must comply with basic no discrimination requirements that prohibit exclusion, segregation, and unequal treatment. The part of the city's...
Sorry, but your time is up.
Okay.
Apologize. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Randy Stevenson. I retired here in Palm Springs in 2013. I live 1.4 miles from Ruth Hardy. It's a very special part for me. I was talking a joke here. A friend of mine who has Alzheimer's, I was doing some errands with him earlier today, and I said, I've got to give a speech, a 3-minute speech at a meeting. And I said, I'm kind of nervous. And he said, just pretend they're naked, and you'll be fine. Well, not funny. Okay. Okay, back to serious business. I'm a tennis player. I fell in love with tennis when I was very young. I follow it. I lived in New York City, went to the U.S. Open. Indian Wells is one of my favorite places. It's the second largest facility around here, and it's close. And when I played tennis for a couple of years when I moved here, and sorry. Look at my notes here. Oh yeah, tennis. I always used to say tennis is the most true sport, and I've always loved it. And as I got older and played a couple of years here, I noticed I wasn't getting to the ball quick enough. And I went to Royal Palms with a friend, Royal Palms Motor thing, and they had a couple of pickleball courts, which are smaller, and they were bouncing this ball back and forth, and they seemed to have a lot of fun with it, and So I went over to Demuth Park indoors and played one game and fell in love with it. I'm a gold medalist at a workshop. So, it was just a natural thing for me to transfer to pickleball. They say pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the world. The U.S. PBA says right now there's 2.8 million players, and in 3 years there's going to be 8 million. That number is staggering, and it's explosive. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I want to just to do a couple of them. Let's see. One thing about pickleball is that in about 20 minutes, you can transfer a tennis court into 2 pickleball courts in 20 minutes. You use chalk or tape, and we bring our own net. So as the history of pickleball, it's new, so where do pickleball players play? There's no dedicated courts particularly. They're getting to be more and more all the time. But a tennis court is so easy just to convert. I mean, we can be in and out. And particularly at Ruth Hardy, there's a lot of negative things that have been brought up and everything, but we're a very inclusive sport, and that's part of the reasons. Am I done? Oh, darn. Well, anyway, just to end, we're only asking a few hours a week on the weekends, and there's many reasons for it. And we're here to stay. We're like a virus. We're not going anywhere because we include everybody. I played with a 92-year-old from Canada the other day, and I played he's gone at James Jesse, which they're doing a youth program.
Yes.
Being across from a black kid is, at my age, and to challenge him is pretty much fun. So anyway, that's my story.
Thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cynthia, do we have anything for the city manager's comments?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for our agenda items today, we have the discussion on Demuth Dog Park and drinking fountains. And Stacy has joined us to talk about dog park and drinking fountains. So, actually, let me interrupt for one and say thank you and all the staff for all that you did to bring our parks back as quickly after the Stormageddon, because it was pretty horrible, and the parks look remarkable. And what you guys did with the city, we all thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know it was horror for all of you, but you guys handled it like champions. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And actually, again, the park maintenance crew, there's 5 of them, and they did an amazing job. They really, as well as all of our landscape contractors jumped in. Everybody's been wonderful and working really hard. do want to warn you, we are still finding issues as we go. Even this weekend, we found a bike trail that got a 60-foot drop. So as we go, as you're out and about, especially in some of the areas that are not well traveled, please be mindful. And obviously, you guys have my cell. Call me right away if you find something. As for the Demuth Dog Park, as you guys remember, those of you who were here last year when we did this temporarily, you agreed with me that we could leave it open just trial basis. I think the subcommittee's done a pretty thorough analysis of what folks want to see up there. So my request of you is nail that down, exactly what you want, when you want it, how much of it. I'll go get the specs, bring it back to you for money, and then we can, on behalf of your commission, if you agree as a whole, we can send that up to budget for council approval. That's really where I'm at. I just need that information from you saying we want 5 shade structures, 20 by 30, we want 3 benches, whatever that is. Lay that out for me, and I'll get the figures, and then we can put it together. Cynthia can put it together for you. I'll work with Cynthia, and we'll get that put together as a package for you. And just so you do know, the fountains, if it's the ones I believe we've talked about, that are the taller ones where you can refill with the bottles, $4,000 each, assuming there's a water line and enough electricity per location.
Now, for some reason, I was thinking that we had tied at least one fountain per park to the redo of the restrooms. Did we get that officially? Okay.
It was part of it, and what we suggested was that at least one in each park. Be a tall one, but then they have them now where you have a filler at the bottom so people can do the water bowls for the dogs. But that was part of the bathroom remodel.
Okay.
Okay.
Which would cover everything except,
And then the bathroom remodel is still a work in progress. I have not actually got the final approval for that yet.
Right.
When that comes in and I see the specs, I'll let you know for sure.
Commissioner Goodman, you have a question?
Yeah, was the fountain for humans or was it for dogs?
Both.
It was for both.
It's for humans. It's a basic fountain with a compressor, and then it's got the
you
tall
put the
flat
bottle, yeah.
side for the bottle, and then almost exactly what we have over here
Got
at
it.
the base.
One of the things that someone said, and I think this is a growing concern, bless you, is the private water bowls. And, you know, there are dog fountains that dogs can just drink out of a fountain when you push a button, and then the water gets recycled, so it actually doesn't sit anywhere. And the complaint that we had from the community was the viruses and the parasites that are left in the water bowls. And people are bringing water bowls and they're putting it with their water bottles. And I think that's the bigger concern is the dirty water bowls, which they're not city property. They're individual, you know, people are bringing them. So the real question is who cleans them and what do we do with it? And, you know, maybe it's a conversation of really banning and eliminating water bowls and just having dog fountains, like the way they have fountains at parks where kids run through and it just kind of recycles in. It might be more costly, but I think it's going to be cleaner and safer for people and for their pets.
Well, if memory serves, in our last meeting, I believe it was Kathy Wiramek that testified. It's actually at Demuth Park, in the facility that is somewhat known as the animal shelters, and that it's being secured now and not available to be used for dogs other than the animal shelter. So I'm thinking maybe if Cynthia, you and Stacy can work on what is that facility? What is that square footage? Does it belong to Parks? We know it's on Parks land, but does it belong to Parks, or is it specifically and only for use of the animal shelter unless we're reseeding?
You're talking about the little small dog? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. It was donated, that fenced-in area was donated by a private citizen to the Friends of the Animal Shelter. They give it to us during the overseeding twice a year and fertilizing in exchange for the basic maintenance.
We somehow need to get that noticed, because people don't understand it, and then they come and complain to us about their dog becoming ill from drinking water in that
Yeah,
park.
they
and
shouldn't,
it's-
usually the animal shelter has a lock, so I'm surprised people are getting in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Boley?
You said that you maintain it all the time in exchange for the use during reseeding, or just during reseeding time? The Parks Department maintains it.
Well, the landscape contract.
They
We
maintain
mow it,
year-round.
yeah,
True.
and we provide the irrigation.
Yes, because we did have people saying, you're not keeping it up, and we didn't know whether it was ours or theirs or whose.
So every now and then we have a little, we try to coordinate getting it unlocked for the maintenance at least once a month. Obviously, it's a small area, so it doesn't need a lot, but for us to just get in there and mow once a month. So it's not, obviously, it doesn't have the same needs as most of the rest of our park areas, but
But other than reseeding, it is locked for the animal shelter?
that's how it's been, yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, I just would like you to actually look into see if that's correct, because what happened was when we did reseeding, and I do want to say there was no notice this time about reseeding, and the commission never discussed the reseeding at the dog park, so I'm hoping if you guys are going to reseed this year, that it will come before the commission to discuss it.
It's a standard set schedule for 3 years now.
Well, I don't know if that's ever been before us. Every time we've been reseeding before, we've reached out to the community, had discussions about it. I know last time we talked about it, I mentioned ideas about being creative, if we didn't have to, if we could fence off parts of the dog park to keep it open. That's where it was left with this commission, that we're going to have these discussions. Lo and behold, I've never heard about a 3-year reseeding plan. I don't think this has ever been before the commission, so I would ask the chair to put that on and we can discuss that. But anyway, to the point, when there was the reseeding of the dog park after many, many years, we reached out, and I believe there was some Measure J money with that space by the animal shelter. And if you recall, there were 2 spaces. There was a space for large dogs, a space for small dogs. The space that's standing today was actually the large dog space. So I have heard some discussion that somebody donated some of the fencing, but there was money spent to put irrigation in by the city as well. And so I'm not sure the chronology that you're presenting is completely correct about how that space was created, what that space initially was created. I remember Vicki saying that the fence was taken down for the small dog park there before the city could stop it. So we're trying to find out who owns what or controls what authority. I think you have to go back when that fencing was put up, so we have something that's more accurate, because my understanding that it was going to stay up for use by the dog park.
Commissioner Goodman?
Travis, I'm curious, what would the end result of that inquiry be? Like, let's just say we find out who actually owns it, who's responsible for the maintenance, then what? Do you have an idea?
Right. Well, I mean, one, to give the correct information, because it seems like we're working on some assumption that there was a private donation, and this space really isn't controlled by the city per se for the use of dog owners in the city. If it is correct that it's got more complicated history than that, and we do have some authority over that, then the question would be, do we want to make it better to keep using it? So, I mean, I think during the discussions, particularly when there was the drought, there were discussions about changing that whole area to something more drought-friendly as well, and that involved those volleyball courts as well.
Which actually still have not been reinstituted. Those are gone, yeah. Do we have other volleyball courts at Demuth? Someplace else other than, they were south of that dog park.
Yeah,
But,
that's it.
okay. That's something else we probably need to determine, because I know that there were youth players from Demuth, from the high school, that were practicing there for a while. Maybe we can get that added to sort of a parking lot, Cynthia, and see if we can bring that back with the determination on really what the dog park issue is there.
Yeah, we'll bring it to the next We'll bring it to the next commission meeting, our findings. So the ad hoc committee will meet, and we'll make a recommendation to the commission. The commission can then do a directive to M&O.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stacy. I know you snuck out of another meeting to come to join us,
No
so
problem.
thank you for joining us. Great.
Let me say one thing real quick,
Sure.
if I could.
Commissioner
Great job
Coldernado.
on the fields, the softball fields, especially 7 and 8, and even 5 and 6, because they were like destroyed. Your team did a great job. We do have a light issue that I wanted to just bring up, but good job on getting them fields. They're dialed.
It was Devin Gillespie and Aris Chavez,
Yeah.
and they worked really, really hard to get
Oh,
those
I know
back
they
in.
did.
You know.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And actually, there is, we found one short in the light system, and apparently there's another one now, so we're actually going to bring in a contractor and chase the whole conduit now.
Cool. Think they'll be
Apparently
ready by
happens-
Thursday?
But don't rain, yes. Apparently, as soon as it rains, it gets a little wet down there, and
I
it's
know.
just that much harder to find.
Thank you, Stacy. Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is the discussion on the subcommittee for renaming parks. Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong.
So first of all, we haven't met, and it's really my fault. I've been really busy this month. My work, I have to take advantage of the weather, so it's been really busy. But I think we done a little bit of work, but we really need to meet with the director to get, I think, some direction. So I think, and I know being brand new, last month was probably tougher. But I think before we do have some examples from other cities, but I think we need a meeting before we dig into it. I think really it's not going to be that difficult to come up with a policy. There's a lot of policies out there, but we have to adapt it for what the community wants, right? I don't know if you guys want to speak, but that's where I'm feeling that.
Yeah, because a lot of it I think is very general, so it just depends on what it is that the city, needs to be put into this policy. But like he said, we do have a couple of examples that I've looked through, and it doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult to come up with something, but just to have a general idea of how we should go about it.
Right, so we can set some time aside and meet and go over what you have found, and at some point, we'll have to develop what this policy is going to look like and then bring it before council for approval before we can put it into play.
We do have some naming requests in already, and we've just asked them to be patient with us. The one thing I would ask if you could possibly do, the next item on the agenda is, I had actually brought forward, I noticed this at Ruth Hardy Park, very high up on a tennis court, there was a sort of a tribute to somebody, and it was a picture, and I think it had their birth and death date and their name, and it was plasticized, and it was clipped, to be hanging there. And it's sort of, while I always respect, recognition for people who have gone, I do worry a little bit about people sort of creating their own little monuments to people. And if part of your general statement can be inclusive of fields, courts, so that we don't have people saying, oh, I'll never get Demuth Park called the less young park, then I'll get this, bench named after me instead, so that people are not just applying their own names to things and doing things. I want to be respectful for people, but we just can't have people hanging signs all over the place with, a picture of somebody who used that court for a while or that baseball field without doing it a logical way. And I don't know that we had a logical way before, but we will with this commission's work, so I appreciate that. Commissioner Diaz?
I was just thinking as you were saying that could be a good way to generate some funds, is to have an opportunity, some kind of standing policy where people could name a bench in memory of a loved one and have a plaque put on it, as we do all over the place. And that might be something, I don't know if it's included in that project or something that we look at, plant a tree or name a tree or something like that with a cost, and a donation to the Parks and Recs Commission or something. I don't know how that all works, but just an idea.
I would actually suggest that everybody take a look at everything that we have out in the commission. I actually found a tree that was named, and I was so concerned because I thought it was done inappropriately because the plaque really looked great. But then I checked it out and it turned out apparently we have a program someplace within the city where you can actually name a tree for your pet and it works. And I don't know where the revenue for that obviously goes to the general fund, but there is something out there that when I took it to Vicki at the time, she said, I'm going to check that out because I don't think that's appropriate.
So,
and then it did turn out to be.
Could you check that out?
Yeah, let me see. Let me go through
See if we
her
can find
files
some.
and see what I can find. I want to say I did come across something that sounds similar. So let me really go through it and make sure that's what you're looking for. And if not, then we'll try to locate
even-
what that is.
This particular one, just so you know, is at the Wellness Park, which again
Right.
is a slight anomaly because the Wellness Park does not belong to the city, to the best of my knowledge. We maintain it for the hospital. So it may be that one has a slightly different allowance.
And I'll reach out to I want to say it's some type of,
Sustainability, maybe.
yeah, and see what they have in place.
It's just, okay, Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, that tree program is the sustainability program. I think one of the things they're trying to do is get money to deal with irrigation and all the problems, and so they've been running it. But again, I don't know, since the director passed away, who actually wanted, that's one of the people that there's a proposal, some of those programs she had, kind of the institutional memory as well at the city kind of went away. So there are programs that exist on paper, but whether or not people are actually doing it now. But I mean, I think some of the commissioners, this hit the nail on the head, is looking at these policies. You know, we've had a couple people come forward, and if you look at some of these policies, I don't see how we could go forward and name like a ball field. They wouldn't fit into these policies. So that's something the commission's gonna have to see, are these too restrictive? Do we want to? But in my research, most of the jurisdictions, what they are trying to do is they try to put people, encourage them to do benches and trees and bricks rather than ask, I want a whole park named after somebody. And so they have these alternatives to do it, but we've seen from people from the community that it's not really enough. So they started doing these kind of covert things and just naming it. I think that's something the committee needs to figure out, what is for Palm Springs. Is there something that's really restrictive, or there's other ways? But that's the real question, you know, really, when it comes down to it. Now, I will say, at the dog park, we have a couple benches that are named after some people that passed away. And to get the city to get those to happen took a councilwoman intervening to get those benches. It was, people lost their loved ones, and Jenny Fote stepped in and finally, it took literally over a year and a half to get the first bench. There was no mechanism at the city to do it. And then once we got the first one, another person passed away, and this one was, the first one was by a family. Second one was more by the dog park community. But even though there was that precedent of the first one, it still took for a long time. So, you know, it doesn't seem like the city was well equipped to deal with these kind of donations.
Well, and it seems like if the subcommittee comes together and comes up with a, you know, approach on that for, you know, benches, and maybe even potentially having a meeting with sustainability, because I know there is a new sustainability manager. You know, maybe it can come up to, you know, a standard where we actually have sort of a package that's available, and you can have A, B, or C. That's what you can have. And I'm sure the commission could or the council could override that and name a park after somebody if they wanted to, but at least we would have something that we've offered up in challenge. Commissioner Lamart?
Well, I'm wondering if we can consider, rather than permanent renaming of specifically like an athletic field, if someone who plays there a lot, perhaps a memorial could be put up just for a month. And so therefore it isn't permanent. It would give more room for more people to use it as a memorial, but rather having it a permanent thing that's going to be there for years. Maybe just a monthly memorial might be an offer that people could use.
I would say absolutely the subcommittee should consider whatever you come back with as your recommendation. You know, we should certainly be looking at it and discussing it. Any other comments or concerns on those two issues? Great. Oh, Commissioner Cohen?
When you say two issues, you mean also about the hanging of signs?
Yeah.
So just, I think we also should consider a way for people to hang signs that do make sense. People sometimes just want to put up a sign that there's a tournament going on for tennis players or pickleball players or what have you. And right now, they're sticking them up with packing tape or twist ties or whatever they can onto the chain link fence. It may just be helpful if we actually put up a board or something where people can put them where they don't. Yeah, a message board. And people are putting up all other kinds of signs. Sometimes people will find something that was found, it's almost like a lost and found or things like that. So it might not be a bad idea, and it probably wouldn't cost a lot of money if we just created some sort of a message board that could go up.
Actually, there is one at Ruth Hardy. There's sort of, it's not very big, but there's a board that they post their lunch. They have a luncheon on Monday and that type of thing. And I have actually seen memorial services noticed there, and then erased a week later. So that'd be a great idea. I might get something a little bit bigger than the one at Ruth Hardy, because it's also very high. I'm tall, and I have a hard time getting up close enough to see what it is. I don't know if I'm tall and it's high up and my glasses are not good enough or what, but I think that's a great idea. On to discussion on seating at the parks. I cannot remember who brought this forward, but I remember.
It was public comments, and there was a gentleman who was at Demuth, and actually I was there recently and walked around and thought, yeah, it might be kind of nice to have a little bench to sit and look at how beautiful it is. And so that really is what it was. There's no public seating at Demuth along the trail or somewhere where people can just enjoy the view.
And is it limited to Demuth? Because I'm also thinking, I guess at Ruth Hardy, there are a couple places where you can walk toward the center and actually sit at a picnic bench, but we really don't have. In the wellness park, there's a nice example of seating through there. Not sure if.
And the person actually suggested removing the 3 benches that are in the large dog park and move them into the regular park or into the park, because they felt that large dog park didn't have the population for the 3 benches. And Stacy did use those, she had extra benches and moved them into the large dog park. I mean, I think 1 or 2 benches for the large dog park is good, but it wouldn't hurt to put 2 or 3 benches in Demuth and let people enjoy their time there.
Commissioner Cohen?
Doesn't this get us back to the last conversation about whether people could donate benches and what have you? We're talking about just a money issue. I don't think anybody has an objection to having a decent place to sit in a park, but how do we pay for it?
There may be things, though, that are in storage. I know when I was complaining because the pickleball courts at Demuth had no stand seating, they miraculously appeared from someplace. And I only complained because they were not chained down. They got moved away pretty easily, but then they got chained down. The one concern I would have about the benches is you can't just seat those anywhere. They have to be seated on hard ground, not grass. So there may be some cost associated with that. But if there's something that we already have for free and we could get them sort of peppered throughout, there may be an issue with safety relative to, I don't know the direction of play in all of those fields, but there's a lot of soccer that goes on. If I drive by there on Sunday morning at 8:30 in the morning, it seems like they've just dropped in various areas and are playing between. Yeah, so the only thing I would worry about a little bit is making sure that if we did do any seating, that it was clearly not in a running path where some kid gets, cut off the knees by a cement bench.
But I think if we
Commissioner
were
Delatorre.
talking about the seating along the path, I know, like my siblings used to play soccer there. A lot of the courts are pretty far away from the path for you
Okay.
to be able to put the benches along, the walking path of the park. So I know a lot of it won't be a problem, like where to place them along the path, because I know
And maybe it could keep vehicles off the grass as well.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So staff can work with Stacy on what number of benches that we have available at the city yard and what it takes in order to have them placed into the parks. And then we can report back to you what that finding is and determine where you would like those to be placed. Meaning which parks you want them to be placed at.
Is there any opportunity to talk to the Arts Commission and see if they can make them pretty?
Absolutely.
I just think, one of the things that they've talked about downtown is maybe just leaving the benches that we have downtown. I hope they don't. I hope they get new ones and they could give us more for the parks. But I would still love to see the Arts Commission come up with a program either for the schools or they've got great artsy ideas. Commissioner Diaz?
When the Clinton Foundation came, and they went and planted trees up at James O'Jesse Desert Highland Unity Center, they put in some trees, and Chelsea and the whole gang were here, and they brought paint, and the kids, we painted the benches. The kids painted them, and one of them, they put their handprints all over, and it was just really cool, and it was fun, and it involved the people that lived in the community. It was fantastic, so I like that idea.
Commissioner Goodman.
And
yeah.
I'd say on the heels of that, the Arts Commission doesn't run programs. And so I think they're all for, art lives here. But on the heels of what Jody just said, maybe getting the school that's closest to the park, kind of adopting that park, and then the kids could come out and do an art project, and that school get credit for it, right? So Cielo Vista Charter could do like Demuth, and Vista Del Monte can do Victoria Park, and I think that's possible. I think that's a nice idea, and I don't think the supplies are very much.
We could probably even get those donated if necessary. But Commissioner Goodman, would you do me a favor? And I know that you know the chair of Parks and Rec, or the Arts Commission. Could you just clear with her the fact that we're talking about this and we don't want to do, we certainly don't want to step into the art department without their nod or weighing in. But I just want to be careful that we're not crossing any barriers there.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments on that or concerns or issues? Great. Oh, Commissioner Goodman.
So it's not really the seating in the parks, but when I was looking at seating and I was looking at the large dog park, and I had a waste bag from my dog, I couldn't figure out where to dispose it. Every single trash can in Demuth Park is blue. And the branding for recycle and waste and trash, it's international. It is blue for recycle and it's black for trash. And I actually had to ask a staff person who was driving, a trailer, where can I throw this? Because I'm thinking blue is recycle and I don't want to put a dog waste bag there. So I think it's a big and there's a lot of them at the park. I think it's a big problem.
It's an issue that we're dealing with sustainability on, because you're right, at a lot of our parks, the trash cans are blue. And so there's a lot of confusion, and we're actually looking at kind of updating or switching out some of those trash cans so that we can reduce some of that confusion and also be compliant with sustainability and what is appropriate and not appropriate. So
right, like putting a blue and a black next to each other, and boom, there you have it: recycle trash, and fewer people will actually find the trash cans. More of them, they'll just use them, and so. Yeah.
And you could split put the lid on, just split the can underneath, and put that lid on that has both options on the top.
The other issue is that there are cement-colored receptacles that have the big recycling triangle on them, and but they're cement-colored. So, we've got three issues. There are big blue cans that are 55-gallon cans that are bright blue. We should not have them here at all. We have had, we've been blessed with recycling containers throughout Ruth Hardy and Demuth. I think all the parks have them, and they're sort of skinny. They've been affixed to the ground. They're bottle receptacles and things that actually, they're beautiful. They say recycling, and those are the ones that sustainability gifted us with so far. But the issue of those blue cans, it's really confusing to me as well. And I just find the dog place where they have the bags and use that for the receptacles. Those aren't quite as often as we'd like to see either, but all right. Thank you. The next item is yours, Cynthia. It is the discussion on the proposed fee schedule for facilities and programs.
Okay, so in July of 2018, Vicki brought forward some recommendations that were put together in regards to program fees. I am basically bringing it back to the table to make sure that this is what you guys are going to want to move forward as we get ready to move it forward to council for the approval for the 19-20 year. I did bring some handouts, so I will send these your way. And I'm sorry I couldn't send them out with the other attachments. It just took me a little while to kind of find out what it was what these fees were. So if you want to pass those out that way. And so these fees that are being proposed is basically what the commission approved when it was being presented. And again, if you guys would just take a few minutes and review them, if there's some discussion that you guys want to have, or we're still okay with moving forward towards this, then I can let Marcus know and we can begin to prepare the city council staff report so that we can move that forward. And then I also wanted to let you guys know that there's a consultant who's working on putting together the fee study for facilities that are being rented in the department. And at this time, the discovery really is that we are basically breaking even with the fees that are being collected for facility rentals or meeting rentals, things like that. And really what the consultant is kind of putting out there for us to make a decision on is, you know, we are big in the tourism world and we need to kind of go into that market of really making more money through these rentals. So Jasmine and I will be working on collecting data from the surrounding cities that are somewhat equal to us and finding out what they are charging when it comes to these facilities, and then bringing that information back to the consultant so he can put the analysis report together so we can bring back to present to you guys. And then at that point, we'll have to make a decision on, do we want to increase the fees a little bit more, or are we fine where we're at? So that we can really try to be in that competitive market of generating revenue when it comes to facility rentals and whatnot. So I'll let you guys review this for a few minutes and then.
Commissioner Goodman.
So I'd love to be competitive, but I do think that we're going to need to upgrade our facilities.
Right, and so when we were originally talking about this, they were talking about, you know, well, you're competitive with hotels. And I did let them know that while we are competitive with hotels, we also are not providing the same type of facility. So we need to make sure that we're looking at other recreation departments in different cities so that we're doing a comparison of apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So.
One question I have about non-residents, have we defined that? The concern I have is if somebody lives here 6 months out of the year and they either have a home but they're not a voting member here because they live in Canada or North Dakota, if they own property here, are they a resident? If they lease here for 3 months, are they a resident? What is it that qualifies a resident? Because I would tell you, the swim center I know is used by people who are not 365-day-a-year people, and they may or may not own a property.
And I think this is where you guys as a commission would have that discussion, and I would bring forward that recommendation to Marcus so that we can include it into the staff report for decision making.
Well, unfortunately, we had a subcommittee that worked diligently to put together a proposal.
I know, I
and-
heard,
and
I got all
that-
the background, and I'm so sorry you guys experienced that. Jasmine, do you have any answers in regards to the non-resident?
The only thing I'm sure of, you already have it stated here, is in terms of, we wanted to provide residency for those who also work within the city. But I don't remember a discussion at all in regards to part-time resident versus full-time resident. But as Cynthia said, I think it's okay to have that conversation and provide her with a recommendation that will go into that staff report to council.
I'd ask the commission if you have a strong feeling on the length of time that qualifies, but I've got to tell you, if somebody comes here for 3 months and they're investing in a vacation rental property and eating and paying for things, now they're not voting, and they certainly can't serve on commissions, but it seems like something that would be helpful. Commissioner Goodman.
So maybe the residence is broken into voting, like people who are registered to vote, and that's a price. Then it could be property owners, could be a price, and then it could be visitors, which are people who might be here for 3 months in a lease. You know, as you look at the breakdown.
So in regards to all of those categories, I can tell you that as we're moving forward with a consultant for the fee structures for facility rentals, that we're actually looking at eliminating categories because there's so much confusion with all these extra categories that we do have. Because what we're looking to do essentially is to take all of this information and post it online so that it's a little bit more friendly of a process with people who are looking to do this. And adding categories to this, additional categories to already non-resident, resident, it's gonna be even more time consuming as staff is processing the registrations of things, and it'll just take away more time from what they could be doing to.
And this is, I mean, the resident, non-resident is a city council thing.
Mhm.
I mean, that was a directive that came from the city council.
Right.
So.
But that's standard in the industry, period. A lot of cities really go by that.
Right.
So it's
And
not
you're
nothing
suggesting
new.
to the city council that maybe they eliminate that and there
No,
just
no,
be
no.
one flat fee?
Obviously, keep the resident and non-resident fee, but don't start dividing non-resident fees into all the extra subcategories because it just becomes more process and more work internally for the department as we're registering people into programs.
Commissioner Cohen?
What is currently used as evidence of somebody just being a resident versus, well, I guess a non-resident doesn't have to prove a non-resident, but what is used to prove residency?
I'll let Jasmine
So
answer.
currently, you have to provide tax documentation, a DMV, something from the DMV, whether it's a driver's license or ID, or a 1-year rental agreement.
So the one,
So what do you mean by tax documentation, just so I understand? Property taxes? Okay.
And or the rental, like a 1-year lease rental agreement.
so it seems as though 1 year is the definition of resident.
Correct. Currently.
Well, I would tell you that if these are approved and go forward, and 60 people come in and present at a council meeting, it'll get adjusted. I mean, I feel very strongly that it's going to be difficult for us to requalify this. We put our program out, so that would cover everybody within the city. It was considerably different than this. I don't have a problem with any of this, although I will tell you all that it is my commitment to carry this to Desert Hot Springs and Cathedral City to talk to their Parks and Recs Commission, as I have previously, to say, when this is done, your people will be impacted, and I hope that you will address the difference between our resident rate and the non-resident rate and help your people use our parks, because I worry about the leisure camp programs, because we're taking a parent from what was probably $82 or $126 a week per child to $145, which for one kid is not bad, but we have multi-children families coming to camp. So I've got a real concern about that. And let me take a look at,
We have a lot of kids from all over going to camp, not just Palm Springs.
And on the
Right.
flip side, I've gone to many other cities' recreation programs to take classes and to do things, and I've had to pay the non-resident fee walking in to do whatever it is that they're offering.
So this is your recommendation?
Well-
Is that what this is?
This is the previous administration's recommendation. I'm just the messenger right now.
this I think came through Vicky and through council's sort of recommendation based on what our subcommittee had done previously and pushed up, which was found to be apparently very difficult to manage. While I think it made good sense, it would require people being able to prove that they fell into a category in any location. It didn't just have to be, Sunrise area or Ruth Hardy area or Desert Highlands or Duluth, any area where a family was disadvantaged and had income issues, there would be a zero or low fee for them. But,
When do you need this by?
I want to say they were hoping to have this portion approved, but at the end of the day, because I was not able to really bring the facility fee study forward, you technically would still have some time.
I mean, it is a lot to look at and making a judgment on in a very short period of time, but when you think of the alternatives, I'm not quite sure what the alternatives would be. Commissioner Colomado?
Is this something that we can go over this Saturday briefly?
Actually, we've probably, I wouldn't want to dump it to Saturday only because we have a pretty full agenda for the sessions, and I was really hoping that Saturday could be really focused on was a bigger picture of the master plan. The master plan is just, Travis Armstrong has been patient with us for years now, and we really need to look at this. And I agree with you, Travis, and I sort of look at you and think, if we put any more on Saturday, we won't do as good a job of that. So I would ask that we be given the month to look at this.
Okay.
But I would also say if we're going to discuss fees, if we can get the fees out so we can review them before our next meeting and come in prepared to talk about them and maybe approve both of them, it would be probably the way to go.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that? Do you have any other questions or concerns? Commissioner Armstrong?
Well, kind of to the chair's point, I mean, this 2013, wanted to raise fees. A whole bunch of parents from Cathedral City came in, complained, council backed down. So was it 2017 or 2018, countless hours, council completely changed and in fact, I'll say it publicly pulled the rug out from under us. We were directed to do something and then publicly scolded by the council members. So I don't really know how much time this is really worth. I mean, if the city has hired a fee consultant again and there's a direction to do this, it'll be interesting what happens because I think this would be the second consultant the city hired for this, and the council, as soon as people showed up, punted it. So do we want to spend all this time again and again? I mean, I know this is really important, but, twice we've had this happen to us, and it's probably going to happen again. I mean, one of the things that we talked about on the subcommittee, which I think is the most fair, is, a sliding scale, because this punishes people in our community who maybe can't afford it. And there's been no real political appetite at the city to do anything like that either. So, do we really want to spend a lot of time on this if there's something already happening? The city wants to do something and then people complain and they're going to back down.
Well, one thing I would say is, as a commission, I appreciate that they come to us at all with some of this stuff because there are other decisions that they make without the benefit of interfacing with commissions. So I think for the fact that they're asking that it's come forward, and I'm sure this is Dr. Reddy that's doing this, I appreciate that he's bringing it back to us. We had done something. This would be something that would be more palatable for council. I'm sort of feeling like it won't take much review before I would say let's put it forward and see how the public reacts to it. And I think that's part of the litmus test, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to, review it and just, shoot your concerns over it and not necessarily, pour all that laborious work that you guys had previously, I can still take those concerns forward and, see what they want to do. But at the end of the day, if it does move forward the way it is to council, you still have to see what's going to happen at the meeting, so.
Right, and I agree with everything that the chair said, and obviously they're asking us for input, but we know realistically what's happened before, but we don't want to say, hey, we don't even want to deal with it. But it is a question of how much time, I think, unless we have people on the commission that just want to devote, how much time, especially Trent put in last time. It was a huge amount of work for nothing really. So.
Well, let's do this. Let's take the time between now and the next meeting to glance at this, get comfortable with it. If we have major issues, and I'm really having a little bit of a hard time with the non-resident qualification, and what I do want to look at is what does this mean for the mother of three or four, in the Cathedral City mold. But when I went to them and talked to them the first time, I talked to the Parks and Recs Commission and said, we are changing our fee schedule. And there will be a change for those people who don't live within the confines of the city. And what I'm asking you to do is either use your sugar tax or some philanthropic people within the city. I'm sure we can work out a way that we charge them the standard fee and you make up the difference. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that with Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs and anybody else, I'm not sure for one or two families that might be coming from Palm Desert, but I would go to any of the other Parks and Recs commissions and ask for some support. And if not, then the fee is what it is for those particular areas. Maybe one of the things that we could try to find out is, do we have a breakdown of attendance?
What I was gonna ask, and, we have the hospital here, and we have a lot of, hotels, industry type jobs where people possibly are commuting in from somewhere else and using Palm Springs because it's close to their work, dropping the kiddos off and.
That counts though, if they're
Yes, so
employed
if
here.
they work in the city or their kid is registered
That changed too,
in.
so I was just.
No,
bringing
but
it
so, whatever the study was before, I did read that if the child did attend the Palm Springs School District, that they would be considered resident versus the non-resident.
But then we just discussed that what you just said to us was considered resident, so I guess I'm confused.
Wait.
Okay.
Now, I forget, are we using the same school district as the Palm Springs Unified School District?
Or, can you repeat that?
Are we using the same, are we saying that the Palm Springs Unified School District qualifies
As a resident.
as a
Yes.
resident of Palm Springs? Because if that's the case, all my concerns have
We're
been,
in 5
Or
cities.
if you work within the city of Palm Springs, so the school
Which is-
district employees, the hospital employees, they all would count. They would just need to show some form of
Proof that-
ID that they work
But-
within the city.
what about the child that attends a Cathedral City school?
But it's
Because
in
that-
Palm Springs Unified, so
Right.
they should be good.
That's-
Well, it says attend school within the city. So I'm not sure if it's the whole district or if it's those schools within the city.
Just
Well, it
within the
says
city.
the schools within the
Right.
city.
City. Okay, so we're not, then, we're back to, I have my issue, but I will go to the other cities and carry the message to them. All right. Sorry that you have to carry the bad news to us all the time, but
Okay, so this is on the agenda for next month.
yes, along with the fees, and we'll try to get the fees out as soon as possible so that we can flip through them. We had actually done that as well and made some recommendations, but we were going by square footage and availability of use and what equipment was there and stuff. So I would say that while we did a lot of work with that, it wasn't as significant as the work was on this piece. So thank you please take a look at it, study it. And in fact, if you have individual questions, please don't copy all, but if you respond specifically to Cynthia with your questions, we might be able to get some things answered in advance so that when we come together, you're comfortable. Thank you very much. The next item is discussion on the swim center locker room policy, and that's for you, Cynthia.
Okay, so in December, we had an issue at our swim center, and so we were prompted to develop a policy for our locker room facility, which essentially will pour out into our regular restroom facilities within the department as well. You guys got the document. Were you able to review it? Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a question for you, Cynthia. So is this partly included in this a recommendation that there will be some construction of a privacy?
So the policy doesn't address any construction, but there is construction that has happened and is happening in the facility as we speak. Stacy and her crew are currently finalizing in the men's and women's locker rooms. They've installed shower partitions and they'll have curtains, so patrons will have increased privacy, which is our goal in the locker rooms. They've also installed a unisex stall on deck, and they're finishing the plumbing work because we want to make sure that we're providing both hot and cold water to that stall. Obviously, because of the rains, was it last Thursday? The Thursday before, they weren't able to complete the maintenance there, but when I looked last week, the women's locker room was just about done, and they were starting up the men's locker room. So I'm hoping that at some point this week, everything will be finished in the locker rooms. The plumbing's going to take a little bit longer because we have some issues with the contractor. So you're welcome. But in regards to this policy and the situation that we did have, it's not just a policy fix. So between policy and some maintenance, construction or reconstruction, we're also going to have to look at some reprogramming. So if you guys don't have any issues with the policy that was developed, then that will move forward to David for approval, and we'll work on putting that into play. And if you guys are ready to go to the next topic.
I do have a question. I actually thought it was well-written. There is a line in there, and this is, I think, the loophole, and that is you can't actually request that anybody use a gender-neutral or non-conforming stall or shower. And so where, as a city, legally, you are providing all of the right things to, make sure that we're servicing the community,
Right.
There's really no enforcement behind it. And
Right.
so the situation that happened could repeat itself because we can't, by law, ask people to use those facilities.
To identify and choose.
Right, but you have something in writing that protects you.
Yes.
So, and you're putting in facilities to be able to say, we provide it.
Yes.
Okay.
So any more?
So we should actually probably be voting on this
Yes.
and pushing it forward. So do we have a motion? Are y'all comfortable with this? And do we have a motion
I move
to accept?
the policy as written.
And to second? So it's Commissioner Diaz and Commissioner Cohen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That moves this forward. Thank you very much. And then the next item on the list.
So then the next item to really continue to address that all of our patrons in the pool, along with parents and whatnot, are comfortable in using the facility and feel safe. One of the things that I think will really kind of just help our overall, not just policy, not just reconstruction, but is also just the reprogramming of the pool. For years, the pool has actually been programmed together with both the adult population and our youth. So I'm bringing forth my idea of basically giving exclusive programming rights to the high school and the club team from the hours of 3:15 to about 6:45, 7 p.m., which is when they use it for both high school, water polo and swim, and then the club team, which would take out the lap swim portion of programming at that time. I do plan on adding an additional hour in the morning for lap swim and an additional hour in the evening for lap swim, so we can kind of subsidize that time that I did take away. I think having this exclusive programming and the separation of youth and adult is a much cleaner programming for us. And I'm sure there's going to be a few people who are upset because the lap swim time is there, but there's a lot of activity going on between the high school and the club team as it is, and they're running out of space, and just kind of going with providing the safe, comfortable atmosphere for everybody. This is the best solution and recommendation that I could come up with to make it all work.
I personally think it's remarkable. One of the questions that just popped into my head, or I would have asked you privately ahead of time, is do we have any transgender children in school? And have we created a solution but not really solved the problem?
We do have some transgendered students that attend programming, and we're basically following the same type of structure that this policy puts in place, but there's programming between adults and our kids happening at the same time, which makes it difficult. And so the separation of this will allow us to provide a more safe and comforting environment for our transgendered youth.
Okay.
And just to add to that, the situation that happened was an adult that was in the locker room during the
I absolutely
youth
understand
programming.
that, but I just don't want to think that we've solved a total problem if now somebody says, okay, I've moved my focus from an adult to a minor who is doing, presenting the same way. So I just want to make sure that, we're in that realization, although we are offering privacy space, which I think has always been important. Having grown up in the Midwest and had to swim 4 years of swimming without the benefit of a swimsuit, I never understood what that whole concept was. But that's, boys went to high school and had to do that. Girls too?
No, I'm curious to know how many adults are actually using the lap or the pool between 3 and 6. Like, what would that number be that we would then be redistributing to other hours?
So it ranges, but I think we're reaching about 3 to 5 every hour. But it's not, 15 or 20 at the same time. It's pretty spread out.
And this would be 5 days a week, not 7 days a week, or would this be?
So it would be 5 days a week. Obviously, there would be some no, it would be 7 days a week because the club team still does morning swim on Saturdays. But the exclusivity would mainly affect the 3:15 to 6:45, 7 p.m. time Monday through Friday. And then obviously during the summer, we would readjust some scheduling too so that we could make sure that the summer camp youth was not mixing in with the adult population in the lap swim. So we would basically have 2 schedules, which would be the schedule I just talked about, which would be spring, winter, and fall, and then obviously a summer schedule. So.
Any questions, concerns, issues? Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, what's the feedback when you've talked to people that use the pool at this time, the adults?
So obviously we're going to have some that are upset and some who understand, but with trying to add the additional lap swims in the morning and in the evening, we're trying to appease everybody, but it's just something that's not going to happen 100%.
And could you explain what you mean by, you kept using the phrase safe and comfortable atmosphere?
So a lot of our transgendered community talk about not feeling safe going to the restrooms, and we actually just had a department-wide training with the LGBTQ Community Center, and they spoke about how some of the transgendered community don't feel safe going to the restroom, and so they'll either hold it or they won't participate because of fear of safety. With us providing the increased privacy with the stalls being in place and the separation of the programming, we help increase that for them and making them feel comfortable in participating in programs and being safe, feeling safe being away from home and participating with the community at large.
So when you're saying safe and comfortable, you're not talking about the children, you're talking about...
I'm talking about everybody.
Okay. I don't know. I think that we should hear from the users before we give exclusive use to our facilities. I'm just curious the outreach that we've actually had and hear from people.
Cynthia, do you want to talk about some of the people who have looked at this with you and for you? Because this is not done in a vacuum.
Right. No, so this policy, I worked with the city attorney, and then the city attorney also went and worked with the, what is it called? I think it was like the NCLR. I asked him to give me what the acronym meant because I'm not familiar with it, but he didn't respond in time, so I don't have it.
Something leisure.
Okay, so what is it? Let me write it down. National Center. Center for Lesbian Rights.
Well, it's not NCR. It's not the Norwegian Cruise Lines.
And the NCLR gave us some updated language, and we incorporated that into this actual policy. As I've shared some of this reprogramming idea, there's been a lot of excitement, not just from staff, but from parents whose kids participate in some of these programs, and it's made them feel more comfortable, especially as camps are approaching with the swimming and whatnot. Because when we did have this issue, we did have some big concerns from parents as to, what do you mean this is happening? I have a little child, I'm trying to protect certain things, and now I'm kind of uncomfortable with what is happening, so.
Commissioner Diaz?
That was before she said that. I was going to say, just as a parent who had kids who used the swim center and took swim classes, and sometimes there's just folks, adults, that make the kids feel uncomfortable, or you feel uncomfortable sending your child, my little guy, into the men's restroom by himself for a number of reasons. So just that little bit of, as a parent, having your kids there and having adults mixed in with them in the public restrooms, I think that's a really good feeling of safety from a parent standpoint.
Can I just ask you a quick question? When you're on deck, is there now going to be a restroom on deck that's a single-person restroom?
There is a unisex stall on deck, and it's located on the south end of the pool. And it's not open yet because we're still addressing the plumbing stuff that needs to happen, but it will be available. It's a pretty decent size, so it could be a small family stall to be used, but that option is there. But just like the policy says, we can't force anybody to use it. So we have to figure out how to be 100% inclusive in everything that we do. And this is between the policy and the change in the locker rooms and the reprogramming. That's how we can work towards being 100% inclusive.
Absolutely. Commissioner Goodman?
Yeah, just on the heels of what Travis said, maybe what we could do is have a community meeting. This is the way we did with tennis and pickleball, and post some signs and invite folks to come on a Saturday morning. So I do think that when we make changes, and I think the swim center is pretty popular, that just saying we care about your thoughts and feelings, puts us in a very different position than just changing policies. So I would be very open to being at that meeting, and I think we should hang signs, and that's just a thought.
Commissioner Foley?
To expand a little bit on what Commissioner Armstrong asked, has any questioning been done of the 3 to 5 people that come there for swim laps as to what they might suggest, or if it would be a burden to them?
So our aquatic supervisor has been having conversations with them as far as suggestions on what might work. I want to say I've only had one swimmer come by and say, I will watch and work the restrooms to make sure there's no incidences. But at the end of the day, that's still an invasion of privacy, and it's not an answer. So
what I'd like to do is ask for a subcommittee to step forward, and I know, Commissioner Goodman, that you're subcommitteed out, but if you could represent there as well. I'd like to ask Jody if you would, because being a parent, you bring us 2 aspects. Is there another commissioner that would like to step forward to be part of that meeting with the swimming community to talk about things?
I'll do it.
Great. Then Commissioner Caldonato, Commissioner Diaz, and Commissioner Goodman, you can work with Cynthia to get the date. I may or may not attend, but I would not be part of your subcommittee. I would be in the audience if I do attend, although there is no issue with the numbers. But I would ask that you put together talking points, because that's what helps us set up, as we have when we talk to community with tennis and pickleball, so that we're in a good position. And I think obviously Cynthia should be on the Diaz with you so that we're talking about this. And I think obviously probably a large facility, maybe the pavilion, since it's close to the pool and it's where their passion is. I certainly appreciate that, and I don't think we're looking for any sort of a recommendation at this point in time on the
No,
item 7.
since we're forming a subcommittee, obviously there's no recommendation until we have met with the community and collected the data there. Then obviously we'll bring that back, and then the commission would vote on whether we move forward with reprogramming or not.
Chairman?
Yes.
I also make a recommendation if now the subcommittee is going to have a public meeting around this as a way of soliciting feedback and providing information. If city staff thought it was valuable to have somebody from the LGBTQ center to help educate you, that may also be a way of reaching out. Maybe
Okay.
they could have somebody come to the meeting and also present as more of an expert as to what is considered safety to children or adults, or what's led to this, because it sounds like it was enlightening for you and maybe for everybody.
Yeah, we can definitely reach out to the LGBTQ Community Center and see if we can get the team that trained us to be a part of the subcommittee, or even just, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be
They
great
might
if
have
they
been a
could come and
package deal.
represent. Yeah, it might be. And do you know who it was? Was it
Jasmine knows their.
It was Alexa.
Alexa? Okay, Alexis.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alexis Ortega.
She did a lot of the LGBT training for the police department with all members of the police department, and the advisory board have been through the training for that. So
No, she's fantastic, so.
yeah. In fact, she and I are working together on the fire department now. So that would be great. I appreciate your stepping forward for that, because I think it will be helpful to move this forward with some control as opposed to just jumping forward. Thank you. For reports and requests, Jody, do you have anything you'd like to bring forward? Just anything at all?
Oh. I changed my mind. I just wanted to thank those of you on the commission that attended the Black History Parade on Saturday. I appreciate you, the representation of Parks and Recs. I was busy fulfilling other obligations as part of the Black History Committee, but I appreciated it, and I hope you enjoyed it. And that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
I have a few things quick. First of all, thank you to Johnny for really organizing those of us who did participate in the Black History Parade and getting the golf cart. And appreciate having the opportunity to do that. A couple of things. I've been asked by some community members who use DeMuth Park, and Cynthia, this may be something for you to be able to enlighten us on. There are security cameras, and I guess work has been going on to actually replace them or upgrade them, and it's causing some people some concern as to what are they, who's using them, who's being watched, who's monitoring them, and they're particularly around the tennis courts and pickleball courts that people have been asking me, and I said I have no idea, so I would just ask city staff, and I think this is an appropriate forum just to bring that to you, and maybe you could help. And it could be as easy as putting up some signs telling people just what's going on in the park. So that's number one. Two, I had sent an email back to staff that I know was circulated in keeping with the Brown Act about the tribe's charity legacy hike this coming Sunday. Thank you. And I hadn't heard back from anybody, and not that I want to put anybody on the spot, but if you're interested in participating, I've been waiting to see if there was anybody else who wanted to work with that, and I'm going to get back to the tribe tomorrow to let them know who might be doing something. So Johnny said there are a number of times, and it could be you could just put in something. From my understanding, I haven't spoken directly, you could put in just as much time as you have or don't have, early in the morning or late if you wanted actually to go on a hike, or be a leader, or be somebody who's a sweep, or manning a station or a table. I just think it would be a great way to begin to have some more interaction and participation with the tribe, and this is one of their big events. So I'm planning on doing it, and I've actually gotten some other friends and other people to do it, but I'd love to have any participation. Just invite you to do it if you'd like it as well, and let me know.
If I may, just briefly, that The Sunday date has been postponed.
Oh, it
Part of the
has.
hiking trail was washed out in the storm. I have not received the updated brochures, but the date has been moved to early April. And when I spoke with her today, she said she was gonna bring by more brochures, which will have the updated date. So I will email it out as soon as possible. She said her team is working on getting the trails prepared, but unfortunately, the storm did wipe out part of the hiking trail that they used.
And that is true. Both, they just reopened the Taquash Canyon Trail as well. But thank you for that. I didn't even know that, so that's great to know.
I'll get it out to you probably tomorrow morning.
Perfect. So-
If you do join, please remember to wear either your badge or your shirt so that people understand that this is the commission at work. So thank you very much.
And just lastly, would it be possible just to get out a status report from Marcus Fuller or from whoever might know on what is going on with the reconstruction, the restriping of the pickleball courts at Demuth Park? The last meeting, he told us that the contract had been, I believe, let, but we still don't know. People are asking because there still seems to be no activity, no movement on what's going on. And it is causing people in the community to be a little more concerned about utilization at all of the parks because there's a crush going on at Demuth Park.
Although I went by the other day and the two courts were packed and the other one wasn't striped because it hasn't been striped
People won't
yet.
go out and stripe it on an ad hoc basis because there's nobody who has the money and the tape and the people to do it. So they won't do that. They'll put it together and they'll do something at Ruth Hardy Park as an organized group that's doing it. But it doesn't pay if you just show up and you want to play for an hour or two. It can take you 15 or 20 minutes to stripe out a court, get it striped out. You have to pay for the tape each time. It's a few rolls of tape and you have to pick it up each time. So people aren't going to be doing that on an ad hoc basis.
Okay, we just, if you need my assistance with Marcus, I was hoping that within, a week or two after the separation, we would have somehow had something done.
I'll follow up with Marcus and let you guys know.
Thank you.
Well, and in the minutes, we were supposed to see sketches, and we were supposed to have a report, because there was a company that he was gonna contract with. So that,
For
I was
Sunrise- for
expecting that
Sunrise
today.
Park, you mean?
No, well, one for Sunrise, but also for Demuth, and that was in our minutes.
Right, well, there were two things. One, they were putting out a contract that was gonna cost about $20,000
Right,
to
that's
do
for the
work at
striping.
Demuth. And also a consultant was putting together
Right.
conceptual plans for the Sunrise Park.
Right, and we
But
were
I think
supposed to have
that
a report
project was
today.
rolled together, right?
All I know is the minutes said Marcus would report back to us at this meeting.
Thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Lamart?
Well, first I'd like to congratulate and thank Jasmine. I thought she did a great job putting together the parade. I mean, I've marched in parades all my life, and I thought this one was organized perfectly. Had a great time. I refused to ride in the cart. I got my exercise. But I was really encouraged. I thought it was fabulous to see the kids out there dancing and the music, and the whole thing was a fabulous thing. If you weren't able to go, I really encourage you to go next year. It was great fun. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was hole 15 at the golf course doesn't seem to be a big important thing anymore. I don't know if you watched the last council meeting. There's $1 million damage at Taquash Creek Golf Course. They have many more problems than worrying about the conflict between CV Link, though I think when they put the thing back together, they ought to consider that. I mean, what a perfect time when the place is torn up to maybe reroute that one hole. But Cynthia and I went out and looked at it, and we saw that in the rain. I mean, we had our little excursion, and then about 4 days later, I sent her the picture of the whole place flooded out. If you haven't been over to the golf course, as you see it from Demuth, you really got to go see it. You can't imagine the destruction and the amount of water until you really go look at what's the detritus that it left behind it. So you know how much that thing was full. It was an amazing thing to see. But I don't think the CV Link and the whole problem is important at this point, just so they're aware that it's there, and hopefully they'll.
Well, it does seem
fix
though
it.
like during a repair of the golf course, it'd be great if they took into consideration,
Sure.
the safety of the CV Link, or CV Link, because it's going to be there.
So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, I have a few things. I did want to respond to some of the comments. Those cameras at Ruth Hardy, I think that was a staff recommendation, and the Public Parks and Recreation Commission did approve spending $75,000 in Measure J funds for those to watch those restrooms. So that is something that this commission has supported. So,
The questions were actually for people from Duluth.
okay, well, so Ruth Hardy. I did want to say to Commissioner Cohen, I think it's really great with reaching out to the tribe. My time on this commission, other commissions, all I ever hear is what can we get from the tribe? What can we get from the tribe? So it's really great to actually try to partner and collaborate with them rather than just asking the tribe for money. I did want to mention, just for Cynthia's sake, next year, if Parks and Recreation is involved with this Desert X, with either our parks, open space, or the trails, that if it can be brought to, if there are any proposals, because some of these sites of these art exhibits are disastrous for the environment and dangerously close to prehistoric archaeological resources. And I don't know what kind of oversight the city exerted on these, but they're real problems. And
Commissioner Armstrong, is that particularly in the city, or is that throughout? Because I've seen things outside the city, but are we talking about city properties?
there's one that I would think would have to have some kind of city approval. I don't want to mention which one it is
Okay.
because
We
it's
can talk
really
offline.
sensitive, but.
Okay.
But I would like if next year, if the city's approached, that we could actually have some kind of information about, where they're going to be, these folks want to put things on the edge of the wilderness and, the trails are great, but trails also bring people in dangerously close to environmentally sensitive and archaeological areas, and it doesn't look like there's been any precautions at all because everyone thinks these things are so cool.
Is that at all part of the Arts Commission? No? Okay.
They do, the Desert X does go through permitting through planning and building. So the sites that were selected were approved. And they went through whatever process planning and building has in place.
I mean, I'm not going to get into it anymore, but I think there were a lot of CEQA exemptions that were given, unfortunately.
Well, I'm not comfortable moving off the topic that quickly. Could we add this to next agenda? Because I really think if we have a statement that we should prepare something to let go to council to say, maybe too late for this time, but you need to be aware if we're endangering some of our lands, it's important, I think, and if we have the expertise and the recognition, I will stand with you on it.
Yeah, some of the installations were removed because of that reason exactly. And what I'm hearing is that the city should present to the commission what installations are going where within our city boundaries so that we as park commissioners, can have a better understanding. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct, Travis?
I think that's both of you. I mean, if we, depending what the commission wanted to do, maybe set forth some policy that we would get to review them, possibly,
I just want to make sure it's not dropped. Can we have that added to the agenda for next time? And Travis, you could bring it forth and we can, discuss it at length, but I'm concerned. Anything else? Okay. Commissioner Delatorre. Good, thank you. Commissioner Coldonado.
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you to Jasmine and her team. That was a great event, very well organized. Thank you for everybody who participated. This was a very good meeting today, and hope we can put this stuff forward and just keep going. So
Absolutely.
That's it.
Commissioner Goodman.
Two things. I just want to bring to everyone's attention the phenomenon of e-games. And the school district is looking at piloting and how it might get integrated into athletics and sports. You can Google e-games. There are states out there that are starting to follow like NFL and the NBA around e-gaming. It's very, very, very interesting. It came up at the library, one of the library strategy meetings. So I'm just putting that out there as something that we might want to think about, as we expand our facilities. The other thing was the retreat. So our retreat, just as a reminder, is this Saturday, and Janet and Jasmine and Cynthia have been great about sending out emails. We've had 4 responses to the 3 questions. So everybody got an email with 3 basic questions. What's the purpose of the retreat? What outcomes do you expect? And what are your 2 top issues or priorities for our parks? And so in those 4 responses, it's the spectrum is like amazing. And I think it's really, when we look at the complexion of our team here, we have brand new commissioners. And so there's a lot of onboarding and intro interest. And then there is, with some legacy members, like I'll just use the master plan as an example, is really diving in and hammering out that master plan, which is a very sophisticated topic for the majority of the commission who happens to be newer. And so it would be really, really helpful if everybody sent in answers to those questions so we can flush out how we will spend that day, so that we actually leave that morning feeling like we accomplished something. Jeff Kors is our new designee from the City Council, and he'll be there for a part of the morning to talk with everybody. So if you could get that, it would just be super helpful. And I know that Commissioner Diaz is not available that day, and other than that, we'll just need a head count so that we can make sure we have lunches and we can have teams and everything. Thank you.
Thanks, and we have a great facility, if I do say so myself. Commissioner Boley.
Excuse me, will you be sending out information about the facility, how to get in there? or whatever?
Actually, yeah,
I got an email, and I'll have Janet send it out tomorrow morning with the directions. I'm hoping that we can send out the agenda or the schedule tomorrow too, because we're gonna have to post it by Wednesday morning. And I know David was asking what's gonna be on, because he would like to stop by as well.
Yeah. Commissioner Boley.
Okay, just to add, I'm sorry I wasn't able to join everybody on Saturday, but I had other commitments with Modernism. Today, the 1 PS planning picnic, all they were talking about was how it was planned. I've worked other parades that Jasmine has done, and I know what a phenomenal job she does. But working with Modernism, I had an opportunity to talk with a member from one of our other commissions who has requested, Measure J was requested that we be on their agenda in May to talk about money. They said that we would be coming up for the 2021 chunk of money, and it's now time to start figuring and budgeting that. And the good news was they don't want to give it to us piecemeal like they talked the last time. If they're going to budget $1 million, they're going to say, here's $1 million, what are you going to do with it? They want us to come up with. So I would like for us to put on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss some ideas that we want to put together to present to Measure J at their May meeting and see what we can do. I guess we need to ask Jasmine or you, Cynthia, when their meeting is in May, so we can get it and see how many of us can attend it.
Yes.
So I just want to add to that, and you'll notice that in the minutes, it mentions that we've had a conversation with Measure J specifically around the pickleball courts at Sunrise Park. They requested that we attend their meeting. They have public hearing and session for public comments before each meeting, at the end of each meeting. So we'll definitely take up Measure J for a May presentation. I've also spoken with Commissioner Craig at Measure J, and we are scheduled to meet with the police department, so that instead of just the Parks and Recs attending Measure J, that we actually get a coalition of individuals to come together and say, this is what our parks need, because we want to increase usage, we want to increase safety, we want to increase lights, you know, and so forth. So I like the idea of it being on the next agenda, and I think that there is a continuum to the work that we did at last year's retreat and what the subcommittee did. I mean, I'd hate to veer so far off, but kind of keep that package, keep it packaged.
Great. Thank you both. Real quickly, Jeff Kors will be our liaison, and I think he maybe have time to be a little bit more involved. than we've had historically. So I'm really pleased that he's going to spend some time with us on Saturday. Understand that he's not going to spend the entire meeting because he wants us to do our work and not feel impeded by his presence. But I was really pleased that he was willing to come, and hearing that David is coming as well, I think is great. I wanted to thank Johnny for pulling together that just fabulous cart, and it was great to be actually lined up right behind you guys. It was a great time. As always, the staff did a remarkable job. All the staff, it was on time, over on time, and people were just amazed. There were people who missed it because they showed up thinking, it'll be 2 hours and I'll just show up whenever. So they realized, okay, next time I have to be on time. So that was remarkable. The one other event that's coming up, I think it's March 23rd, is the 1PS picnic. And I'm pretty sure staff will be doing either face painting or pictures or whatever with the kids. But it's always been nice to have a couple of the commissioners there to get to meet our constituents and talk to them about Parks and Recs and what's going on and hear their complaints, hear their thank yous. Today we had somebody come in and say thank you, which I know we don't hear that often, but I was feeling really good. I kept waiting for the but.
I did, when he said he had two things, I thought for sure number
The
two
second
was,
one's, yeah.
was
But
the butt.
it was remarkable. But if you could step forward and do that, I'm not going to take attendance or anything, but the staff works really hard at these events. I like to go out and see them at Street Fair, and they're working hard at those. So it's kind of amazing what Parks and Rec staff, who you think are just teaching tiny tots, are also running parades, painting with the kids and doing things like that. And I really appreciate the staff.
Do you have a
Sure does.
time and place for that?
It is at Ruth Hardy Park, and I believe it starts at, anybody know, 9:30 or 10? We could send something out to
believe
everybody
it's
just to
10
let them know.
a.m.
10?
I believe it's 10 a.m.
One other thing I did want to ask, we're 2 months behind the groundbreaking of our downtown park, and the subcommittee that's on that park has not heard anything, except that the plans are being worked. Has anyone else got anything to report on why? No.
I'm not sure if Cynthia does, but I have not had any updates other than it is delayed.
Okay.
Is that still Christie and JR?
Yeah, as far as I know, I haven't received communication.
I will check. That's all I have. Staff update? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Cohen?
Commissioner Coronado and I, when we were at the parade, realized that even though we were there, no one knew who we were because we have no signage, which is also the same thing that happened at the Pride Parade, and I'm sure it happens routinely when people show up. They're happy to see us wave, but they have no idea that we are the Parks and Recreation Commission. Just a thought, but would it be possible to have some sort of a Parks and Recreation banner?
I was there.
We did last time.
It was there. I was out there.
It was out there.
And it was right where your spot was. There was multiple banners that said Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yeah, what they generally are for, though, is vehicle magnets like I had on the side of my car. So,
We didn't know. We
well,
didn't- we
but
didn't
they
know.
were in a golf cart, and there isn't a lot of siding
Yeah,
to put
but
it.
normally you can put it on the front or sometimes on the
Okay.
back.
Great.
But it
But-
might be better if we just also got a banner that you
Banner.
could hold, so, because I know the same issue occurred
At
with
Pride,
Pride.
yep.
So we'll just have a banner made as well, so you have options depending on what
Perfect.
parade you're in.
Thank you.
Well, and I'm just going to take a chance and throw it out there. One of the things that has come up from several commissioners and people in general is, why don't you invite all kinds of people out that use our parks to walk with you and hold their pickleball rackets and their tennis rackets and their soccer balls and whatever. So we should think about that at the next parade that we participate in to show the force of the park. It's pretty phenomenal. I mean, can you imagine? You wouldn't want all the soccer players. It would become a 3-hour parade. But yeah, absolutely. So there are some opportunities there, and I think it'd be great. Over to staff.
Just Saturday's event was fantastic, and it was awesome to watch the team really, go to work, and the organization of it all was impressive. And for me, I would really like to just see it a little bit advertised a little bit better so that we can make sure we're reaching everybody, but we're working on that internally. But it was fantastic, and thank you guys for coming and just being supportive. And Commissioner Diaz, thank you for your work with the committee and all of that. So,
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn to our next meeting of the Parks and Recs Commission. Well, actually, we will adjourn to the retreat on Saturday, March 20, no, what is?
March 1st, 2nd.
March 2nd, which is being held at the Four Seasons Lodge at 3800 Four Seasons Boulevard. And, sorry? 3800 Four Seasons Boulevard. Thank you all very much.